Hello and welcome to this tutorial video. This is Adrian from the Freakish Lemon video podcast, and this tutorial is going to be talking about simple crochet borders. This tutorial assumes that you have a working knowledge of basic crochet stitches. If you do not know anything at all about crochet, please see my previous tutorial about crochet basics before watching this one. For reference, I am using a USH 5mm crochet hook, and I will be doing this demonstration with this brightly colored worsted weight acrylic yarn. So for simple crochet borders, I'm going to teach you a border that I like to use to finish off my blankets, and it is usually a variation on a single crochet border with a double crochet layer after the single crochet. So, what do we need to know about borders? The most important thing about getting your borders right is actually twofold. So if you've got your finished crocheted thing, usually a rectangle of some kind, you will start, or I will start, the border somewhere close to a corner but not on one. So I'll start here, work across, and then come to the corner. Corners are relatively simple once you know the construction of a corner in crochet. If you're used to doing granny squares or things like that, usually the corners end up being chain stitches, but this is going to be a solid border all the way around. So let's say you do a bunch of stitches here, you come to the end. And you know you have to do a bunch of stitches going this way. This last stitch is your corner. You're going to do 3 stitches in this stitch. 1 stitch for this side, 1 stitch for this side, and 1 stitch in the middle to connect them. The other thing to know about doing borders on crochet is going down the vertical sides of your work. Now, I can't claim to be an expert on this, but I've done a fair number of blankets, so if you struggle with going down the vertical side of your blanket or your swatch, that is a common thing that people tend to struggle with. I'll show you some things to look for when you go down the vertical side and how to turn the corners. Here we have a single crochet swatch. We're going to connect a new color, crochet to the corner, create the corner, and then go down the side. Do the corner, go across the bottom, do the corner, go up the side, do the corner, and then go through that. And then I'll show you how to do the next layer above that, which is easier to do than this first border. So for my first border on this swatch, I'm going to do a single crochet border in this white acrylic yarn. We're going to start with a slip knot. Put that loop on your hook. We're going to join this working yarn to this finished piece with a slip stitch. Pull that tight. Now we're attached. Just like the crochet starts of the rows or the start of a round, because we're creating a round now. We're going to start with some chain stitches to take the place of one single crochet stitch. So we're going to do one chain for the single crochet. And if you have problems recognizing the start of your row, put a stitch marker in it. So the next 3, because this is a chain, will be a simple single crochet, the way you normally do. Of course, the corner chain is always a little bit finicky. So we've got that corner of our top edge. In our diagram, we've done the first stitch. We need to do one more stitch for the turn, and then one stitch for this vertical side. So we're going to go do 2 more single crochets in this same chain. 1, 2. Now we have this side stitch. Because this is a plain single crochet swatch, it's easier to figure out where you need to put your hook along this vertical edge. For this vertical edge, I'm going to put a stitch everywhere I see these 2 legs that can easily fit a stitch in them. And it may take a couple of tries to get this right, especially if you have patterning or if you have taller stitches. We'll go through one on a double crochet swatch as well to see the difference. So quickly go down, single crochet in each of these little 2-leg sections. Under the 2 legs. And it's a good idea to stop and see, was that enough stitches? If it's pulling in, might not be enough stitches. This doesn't appear to be enough stitches to go down. So you rip it back. So what we're going to try now is in the 2 legs and in under this bump. That would make it 1 stitch per row. Which you can see lies much flatter. It's not pulling it in. It can be a bit of trial and error when you first do this. You single crochet all the way down to this. I'm going to skip this little bit here and go into this first chain space to start my next corner. No, I'm not. That doesn't look good at all. See, it's a lot of trial and error. I don't think this part ends up being absolutely correct first go every time. All right, so that's one in each row and then one in the chain foundation. Because we have to have one from this edge, one in the middle, and then one in the next edge. So we got one for this edge, one for the middle, and then one for the next edge. And then usually the bottom chain or your chainless foundation row will make it pretty clear where you need to put your hook for each of the stitches. I'm just going to go a couple of stitches down the line here and then show you the corners close up. You can see here we have a stitch on this side, a stitch on this side, and one in the middle to bridge that area. And it makes a pretty clean corner. So we'll keep going. Through the bottom chain stitches. Single crochets. It looks like we've come to another corner stitch. So one for this side, one for the middle, one for the next side. Now again, we're going up the vertical side. Whatever you end up doing for this side should be the same thing that you do on this side. So we tried just going into the obvious V's, didn't work. So we have to go each row behind the bump, behind the V's, behind the bump, behind the V, behind the bump. So bump, V, bump, V, continuing down the line. And if you're not great at this, first few times you try it, that is okay. Starting with this single crochet is very forgiving. It's better to have too many than too few. If you have too many, you can always decrease them on the next round. But this is looking pretty good. So for this gauge, with this type of yarn, a single crochet in each row makes a good vertical border. So I'm in the corner stitch. I've done the first single crochet. I need to do the second one to bridge, and then the third one for the new edge. You keep going into the tops of these stitches. until you get to your starting point. And you're going to slip stitch to join it. I'm going to slip stitch it with a new color so I can show you the next layer. This is also how I like to do my crochet borders. I'll do a couple of different stripes around. So pull through that slip stitch. Remove the stitch marker. And we're ready to start the next one. So for this second chunk of the border, I like to do a different height stitch. So we're going to do a double crochet stitch around the rest of the border. So we're going to chain 3 to act as that first double crochet. And this is the first stitch, directly where it comes up. So we're going to do a double crochet in the next stitch and keep going until we reach that diagonal corner stitch. So this is the last stitch that aligns with the initial row. This is the bridge corner stitch. In the bridge corner stitch, you're going to do 3 stitches the same way we did in the corner stitch, because we're still turning a corner. And we want to make sure that the piece lies flat. So we need 3 stitches in that corner to turn it. Now I'm going to go 2 stitches down that side so you can see. With the double crochet, it's not as sharp a corner, but you can still see this is standing this way, this one's standing this way, this one is leaning out into the corner. The taller your stitch, the more rounded this corner will look, but it is a definite corner. If you had not done this other stitch, if you had just double crocheted around, your crochet would stand up like this. You would be the start of a cylindrical shape. But we want it to stay flat. So we have the 3 corner stitches. We will keep going along the border. And this round will be longer than the previous one, because when you create corners, you add stitches to expand this outward. So we're coming up on the corner. So that's the last stitch of this side. That's the first stitch of this side. We need to do the 3 in this leaning stitch. Do 1 double crochet, and then 3 double crochets in this stitch. I'll go 2 down. So you can see the turn of that corner. And you continue in the same manner around your piece. So we just did the last stitch on this side. We've got the corner stitch and then the first stitch on that side. So 3 double crochets in the corner. And then continue with your normal double crochets. That's the last stitch for this side. Do our 3 double crochets in this corner. And then continue with 1 double crochet in each stitch. So now we're going to slip stitch this closed into that top chain stitch that we had marked as the start of our row. I'm just going to do a chain, pull that tight. There you have a simple crochet border. Now this little gap here will become less noticeable as you use the blanket or block the piece or whatever. That's why I like to put it off center, because it is a little bit noticeable, but I don't want it too close to the corner in case you're unfamiliar with how the corners work. On my own, I would probably put it right here, or maybe even this first stitch, and then go around the corner. But for this demonstration, it was easier just to put it over there. So that is basically the construction of my simple borders that I like to put on blankets. You can do this as many times as you like, in as many different stitches as you like. So now we're going to do the same with this finished swatch of double crochet stitches. These stitches are taller than the single crochet stitches, and there is a lot more space in here. I'll show you this side real quick. It's a lot harder to see where you should be putting stitches on here. You can see there's a couple of places where there's some V's that make sense, but some places that don't. So we'll get my white yarn and we're going to do the same single crochet border to start. So we'll start over here, slip stitch to join the yarn, chain 1, and we're going to mark it with a stitch marker so we know which stitch to join at the end. And these next few stitches are just like the ones we've already done. This is the corner stitch, so I've done the one for this side. Do the bridge stitch to turn it. One for this side. Now, one thing that I have been known to do, and I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do your vertical edges, but there are times when I will just do my single crochets in these spaces created by these chain stitches on the end, instead of trying to force my hook through these chains. But it will pull that gap wider as you go, just because these stitches are already a little bit wider than the spaces between the normal stitches. So the trick is to try to evenly space your single crochets down this row of doubles and chain stitches. So I'm first going to see if I can do a stitch there. So I want to try to keep these stitches about as close as these stitches. So this stitch is about as close to this stitch as these two are, which means I got to put one somewhere around here. Just insert the hook, pull a loop through, and that looks about to be the same distance too. So this is actually a chain stitch here. We'll put a stitch there. See, that's a little too far. There's kind of a bigger gap there. So we'll rip that stitch back out. And we'll try to put one into this chain stitch. That's closer. So we're seeing that on the chain stitches, we want to try to put a single crochet in each chain stitch, and then one single crochet in each half of the double crochet stitch. And that's getting us about the distance that we want between those stitches. That looks even. It's not pulling in and it's not flaring out. If you put too many stitches in there, it will flare out. This is more or less laying flat and in a straight line. So if you're doing this across a 6-foot blanket, periodically, if you can, just lay it flat on a surface to see if the stitches are pulling in or if they're bowing out and there's too many of them. So that's a double crochet stitch, and now we have the chain stitch. We want to put a single crochet into 2 of the chains. And then a single crochet into the top half of this stitch, and a single crochet into the bottom half of this stitch. And then the 2 chains. One, 2. Let's these tails out of the way, lay them out. It is a little bit wiggly, but that looks fairly even. It's not bowing out like crazy, and it's not pulling in to make it a scoop like that. This is also why I like to do single crochet in the first border around, because these stitches aren't very tall. If these were double crochet stitches, this little bump here that's naturally created by these chains parading as double crochets in the row would be much more pronounced because they're so tall. The single crochets give it a chance to kind of even out. So I'm in a corner. I've done the stitch for this side, so I need to do the slanting bridge stitch and the stitch for that side. So 2 more single crochets. The starting row. So now we've gotten to the last stitch of this side. Got the 1 stitch for here, the slanting one, and this stitch for the other side. So now we're going to do the same thing on this side that we did on this side. See how it looks. So those are chains, this is a double crochet. So I've done 1 for this side. I'm just going to skip over, go through the bottom half of this stitch. And then 2 chains. One in this half of the stitch, 1 in that half of the stitch, and the 2 chains. If you really struggle getting these stitches into the double crochet or the chains, you can just do the stitch around the whole stitch, like that. It'll give you a different look, but it is something you can do if you struggle with getting your hook into the different parts of the stitches. And these 2. 1 and 2. So we can see we're a little crooked. There is a little bit of pulling there. But if you're making a giant blanket, that is going to be not a big deal. So I've gotten to the corner stitch. Actually, no, we haven't. There's still a chain up here. That's going to be our corner stitch. So that's the top. That stitch there. There we go. I'm going to do one more stitch to bridge and one more stitch for this last side. And then we'll go along top stitches as normal. One more stitch. And then just like before, we will slip stitch into that stitch we had marked. I'm going to slip stitch with the new color. That didn't work. Try that again. So slip stitch with new color. This time we're going to do some half double crochets around. So I'm chaining 2 and marking the chain with the stitch marker so that we know where the start of our row is. Now this does look a little bit wonky. I may not have exactly the same number of stitches on either side, but this will even out as you expand the border on your blanket. So here's our first 10 stitch. We're going to do half double crochets. Just like before, when you come to that turned corner stitch, you're going to do 3 stitches in that stitch. So 3 half doubles. We're going to keep going along that edge, same way we've been doing. We come to that slanting corner stitch. I'm going to do 3 stitches in that corner. I'll go a couple of stitches down so that you can see what this looks like. And one more. So now you can see your white stitches are still a little bit wonky. They still kind of pull in a little bit, but this orange edge, completely flat. Completely resolved any weird tensioning that may have occurred because of the different tightness of the stitches, or possibly a different number of stitches than that side. You can see it's still a little bit wiggly over there, but this orange edge is completely flat. So we'll keep going to the next corner. And when you come to that slanted corner stitch, you're going to do 3 half doubles in that corner. Now keep continuing down the next side. That's what we look like so far. Got one more. So there's our slanted corner stitch. We're going to do 3 stitches in the corner. So you can see this side does probably have one more stitch than this side does, because it is a little bit wonky over in this area. But if you're making a blanket, this is going to be negligible. It's only showing up because this is a small swatch. Probably this stitch right here I could have gotten rid of. But nothing's perfect. So we'll just finish this round. And then join this marked stitch, which I'm going to get this stitch mark out of the way for. With a slip stitch, and then just one chain pulled really tight to finish it off. Again, with the taller stitch, you do get a little bit of a gap there, but if you keep it close to the corner, kind of out of the way, Nobody will even notice. And that is a simple crochet border. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment down below, or if you've seen any other techniques for crocheting borders along the vertical sides of your project, please let me know what they are. I'd love to learn more about it. This is sort of self-taught, so this is what I've done on many blankets. So if you have any questions or if you have any other tips and tricks you'd like to share as a resource guide, put them down below. Don't forget to subscribe or thumbs up or favorite this video if you found it to be helpful. And I hope you enjoyed it.